I'm Aryeh Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show where it's all about the W. It's Monday, so no games today, but after an action-packed weekend, we got to discuss all the happenings. Show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at Winsidr.com. That's Winsidr.com. If you're looking for a fun way to enjoy the W, join us over on Playback. We got tons of games coming up this month and next month and the whole WNBA season. Our W watch parties are something you don't want to miss. Use the link playback.tv/Winsidr. That's playback.tv/Winsidr. It's free. You plug in your TV subscriptions, your League Pass subscriptions, and we're all watching the game together, enjoying some amazing basketball. Welcome back to the Winsidr Show. I'm your host, Aryeh Schwartz, with the great, the Hoff, Rachel Galligan. It was just trying to embarrass you. It was a fun weekend in the W. I feel like we're kind of finally getting to understand who these teams are, what's going on. Just to kind of recap, Connecticut and Vegas split some back-to-backs. LA blows multiple big leads, but does pull off a win against Chicago. Chicago is, I'm going to call them like the stovetop. They're either hot or they're not. You know, they're beating and competing against top teams, but then they're losing to middle pack teams. And then obviously, you know, Minnesota gets another win, Phoenix gets another win, Indiana still chasing that elusive late game win. What was kind of your takeaway from this weekend? What stood out? What was big moments? Obviously, we got to talk to Anna Bonner.
I mean, yeah, that was an incredible performance. What was it, 41 or 44? It was 41, right?
Yeah.
That was awesome. I would say that was probably my highlight of the week outside of Sue Bird and Sill's jersey retirements. I thought that was a just awesome performance and showed, you know, like the Aces are human. And I think I learned this week that Connecticut's for real. Not just because of that win, but just like you said, we've seen these teams, you know, 9 to 10 times so far. And so you're really starting to get an understanding of like, what are these teams about? What are their identities looking like? I agree with you on Chicago. Like, I'm not surprised. I mean, I've said it like on the last 4 shows. Like, they're going to like be in games and then they're going to like drop really bad ones. That's just how it's going to be. I think LA, you know, it's just, it's crazy because we want to be excited about the fact that it's a new era. And yeah, I think that overall the identity and the culture there is better. But you still have some pieces that are coming into play. Jasmine Thomas, Azrae Stevens, not looking anywhere near, you know, 100% or even much into the rotation. And then you get the news of Lay being out. So I think like LA, they probably want to see the success faster than what they're seeing it. But at the same time, like you're 4-4. You're playing without 2 key starters who, you know, are just getting back into rotation. Crazy to look at some of these, you know, late game situations that they've kind of blown. And also on the other side of it, crazy to see Seattle come back down 21 and then down 28 and damn near win the game the other day. Like, I kind of have to say, I knew Seattle was going to be bad, and I sit here and I'm like, man, poor Seattle, this sucks. But the more I watch him, the more you really do just get the sense that, like, okay, yeah, it's a lot of young players, a lot of youth on this team, a lot of players that have not played together. But I love just their fight and their grit and their toughness, especially in the second half. Like, they don't really get discouraged if they're down 20. They just kind of slowly chip away and fight back. And I can respect fight. What I don't respect is when a team just looks atrocious. And I'm trying to
What do you
think
respect more? Giving up a 20-point lead in the first half or blowing a 20-point lead late in the game.
I
No, because I think it's like
I think
it's an
it's
interesting
easier to.
situation.
I think it's hard, especially when you're a young team and you're a team that doesn't quite have any identity whatsoever. I think it's easy to come out of the gate and just like get waxed. You know, like Seattle's come out now and they've got like they've dug themselves into these holes because I don't think they know outside of Jewel Lloyd who is supposed to get these touches, who's supposed to take the shots. Very much a lot to figure out, and it will be the case for the entire season. But the fact that they don't just like roll over and they kind of do. Who knows? Maybe LA or who was it, Chicago, whoever it was, fight back. Maybe they just don't want to be humiliated that terribly. But I respect clawing back from a slow start. I think blowing a lead, like not being able to play the second half with a 20-point lead and like blowing that with veteran players is alarming to me.
And just to be clear, like what LA had a 21-point lead over Seattle. Um, they were up like 24-4 at the end of the first quarter. Similarly, LA ends the Minnesota game on a what was it 19-3 Minnesota run, 17-0 Minnesota
17,
run.
17
Um, and then you look at, but then also like you start to question, oh, is LA crazy or whatever? And then you look at Washington, who is up by what 28 at one point versus Seattle. Seattle claws their way back. If it wasn't for, I'll say it, a questionable call on Kia Nurse under the basket, we might be talking about a different situation of that game. They might complete that. Um, Look, there's been a lot of. I'm not one to put a game on the ref's shoulders because I strongly believe like if the team allowed it to be in the hands of the referee, that's your fault. You deserve to lose. That said, two very impactful penalties of recent. One was on Dorka Uhas in the closing minute of the Lynx game against, I think it was against Indiana, and just rough. It was just a bad call. And then similarly with the situation in Seattle, where both teams were making comebacks, both teams were very close, and look, you're up by 3, you're up by 2, you're up by 1, and you get a foul call, gets sent to the line, and you can, that's like a 5-point swing right there, and that can really close out a game late in the game. So I think on the one hand, it's a great sign that we're seeing these competitive games because the key phrase that we've heard of recent years in the W of parity and parity and parity, that's not the case this season. There's parity in like the middle to lower pack, but like there's not much parity this season.
It's
Um,
I said this to you yesterday. I was like, I'm gonna sound off. There's some ugly basketball happening right now. I'm not gonna lie. There's some.
first half Seattle is an ugly basketball team. Right now Washington D.C. honest, like yes, they got the victory. They went on like a crazy streak. It was the fourth quarter, and I think at a certain point there was like under 4 minutes left, and the only person to score in the whole quarter was Ariel Atkins with 5 points. Like the
Yeah.
Mystics have some serious
I mean,
issues.
the Mystics didn't score for like 7.5 minutes in that fourth quarter. I mean, they barely pulled that win out against Seattle. I mean, that was like Mystics. Now I know they've won 2 in a row, but my God, like what is it about that team? Like something does not sit right with me.
My issue with that team is we know like who's on the roster. We know they can deliver, even with the question marks we have that we've been saying all season. Heck, going into free agency, adding Brittany Sykes is great and everything, but that's not going to help your offense really. And we've seen those same issues come to fruition. My big concern right now, not to oversell it or anything like that, is little T, because it comes down to when you have the skill, it comes down to do you have the ability to make the adjustments mid game, and we're seeing a young coach who's never been a head coach before struggle in some of those ways.
Well, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it hurts when Adeladon is out. I mean, her and Austin have carried this team all year. Now, I do think the backcourt has gotten going a little bit between Cloud and Adkins. Maisha Hines Allen does not look anywhere near what we know she can do. But but then I say that and I step back and I'm like, okay, it's the second week of June, you know? Like for me, you're back to your parity point. For me, it's three teams and basically everybody else. Now, you might say, okay, there's three teams and then maybe like two more and then everybody else. Like Vegas, Connecticut, New York are like up there. And then I think you have Dallas and Washington. I'm pretty high on Dallas given the fact that they have been really shorthanded. I think when you have a player like Enrique and the way Sabalis played, once they get back to full strength, they've got McCowan back and things like that. Like I really think Dallas has a shot. They're one of those teams that I'm like, you've got the talent, you've got the superstardom. They just need a little depth, and they could cause some issues. But after that, it's literally everybody else for me, at least right now.
I completely agree. The one thing that I think has been really, really interesting with Dallas is honestly just Enrique. Like, look, first of all, Jerry McCown's not there. They're playing with. I mean, I'm not gonna say some phrase that people are gonna get offended by, but a player who's not as good as Tierra McCown, like flat out, we know that Kalani's just not a Tierra
Yeah,
McCown.
but
She's
they're
being
also
serviceable. She's
and
playing well.
they're maximizing what she can do. And shit, shout out to Odyssey Sims, who freaking joined the team a week ago and has come in and been huge for them. They've got to find a way to keep her on that roster, in my opinion.
Yeah, and with the amount of injuries they've had, here's the thing that's really excited me about this Dallas team. I think this Dallas team is going to go as far as Enrique can realize what her position is on this team. She is not the superstar in my opinion. It's Satu. This is a breakout season for Satu. But here's the deal. Enrique in her last 5 games against Washington, Connecticut, Phoenix twice, and New York has had one game with less than 5 assists. That shows me a player who's understanding what her role is on the team. Now, granted, in that loss to Washington, I saw a moment that maybe I'm blowing out of proportion. It was the last moments of the game. Satu has the ball. Enrique's wide, north of the 3-point line. If time's expiring and you need a shot to win the game, I'm throwing it to Enrique. I don't care if she's triple covered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time else during the game, I'm going to Satu. Now that was a moment where I think it's a learning moment. You need to understand the situation. If you're Satu, yes, you're the up and coming star. Yes, maybe you're taking the throne of this team, but still understand why Enrique was arguably the superstar of this team. Still understand why Enrique has a name for herself. It's because clutchness runs through her veins like blood through a normal person. Um, and yeah, I'm very very excited about this Dallas
When
team.
I gotta say, I mean, Dallas and New York were toe to toe on Sunday. I mean, that was a really, really evenly matched game through halftime. And if Dallas doesn't come out and I don't want to say lay an egg. Now, maybe you also credit New York. No, New York outscores Dallas 34-17 in that third quarter. And I know Dallas has got to be sitting there thinking, man, we wish we could get that third quarter back. It's kind of like you dig yourself a hole coming out of halftime, and there's no coming back from that. But really evenly matched game until honestly I saw New York put together the best quarter I've seen from them all year. In terms of sharing the basketball, the amount of assists, like I mean, that was the New York, that third quarter of that game against Dallas, that I was like, okay, this is the potential of this team that I think everyone is incredibly excited about. And is that a credit to New York, or is that, did Dallas like let up? I think it's obviously a little bit of both, but that was a really impressive matchup between those two, I felt. And I know, again, you saw how close Dallas could be if they didn't just kind of really struggle that third quarter. But yeah, how about New York? I mean, I don't know how much you watched that specific game, but it was encouraging to me to really see this team start to click. I think Brianna Stewart's the front runner for MVP early on in the season, in my opinion, if I had to vote today. But I think this team is really starting to come along a little bit.
I think it's Alyssa Thomas or Brianna Stewart, no question. I'm a little bit lower on New York than a lot of people, and I know I'm gonna get flack for that. Don't care. Made a Teflon. Bring it on. No, but like my thing with New York is I've seen flashes of it through quarters. I haven't seen a complete game yet. And what I've and look, even New York struggling, is a top 3, top 5 team, right? And so for me, like I'll be blunt, we just came out with the Winsidr power rankings. We can go over that in a moment, just kind of run down, see if there's anything. I had, give me all the flack you want, Chicago higher than New York. And I know people think it's crazy. Whatever. The like
Hey,
Chicago
who's
ran with New
man?
York.
Stand by it. Stand by
Oh, Hillsider.
it.
Um, look, like Chicago ran with New York for both those games, had a fluke of a period, of a quarter or of a half, whatever, gets back in it, takes the second game after, in my opinion, they blew the first game. We can get into details of like how it comes down to power ranking. For me, what we've seen is these overly exceptional, almost improbable quarters from New York where they just go off like that 30 something to 17 quarter that we were just talking about. Those shine, and I think they stick out more in a lot of people's memories than the struggles we've seen from New York. New York got outclassed in the first, or outclassed, I don't know. That's what I say. People are going to take it the wrong way. New York got outplayed in that first half by the Dallas Wings. They played an amazing third quarter that destroyed the Dallas Wings, and then the fourth quarter was pretty evenly matched. If you ask me, I don't walk away from that game going, I'm so confident in New York's ability. I think there's been games where, and look, this is what great teams do. They find ways to win. That's what great players do. They find ways to win when the game isn't, clearly decided for them. So props to New York. And I think, honestly, if anything, if you're a New York fan and you're saying, "Oh yeah, I hate you because you're not putting my team high enough," you don't want your team too high right now. You want, like, coaches always talk about this progressive growth throughout the season so that you're peaking at the right moment. The New York Liberty are not peaking. We haven't seen a complete game yet. When I see that, then I'm going to start visioning that, and then maybe that's when we're going to start going, okay, they're starting to peak. Can they sustain this for a long period of time? What's that going to mean? I Yeah,
That's
excited about that.
if you back it up and you explain it, okay. I mean, we're not here to all agree on everything. That's the beauty of working with different people and having different ideas. I like that. I like giving me a different perspective. What I do want to talk about is the Atlanta Dream. What are your thoughts on that?
Really underwhelming. Um, like
Like
really,
I was
really underwhelming.
all I could think about yesterday with the Connecticut Sun were the turnovers. 26 turnovers. Connecticut had, what was it, 42 points. 42 of their 89 points off turnovers. That is I don't care who you are, you're not winning that game. It's actually amazing that game was as close as it was to just be a 12-point game. Clearly, the turnovers in that one, I'm sure Coach Wright is absolutely beside herself on that. That's not pretty. That's not good. I get that you do have some injuries, but I'm that's a tough one for me. Like I can't figure out Atlanta so far. Cheyenne Parker's been a huge bright spot though. Like Cheyenne Parker's really, really, really she's bringing it this season, and I think she's not being talked about enough in my opinion.
She's not. She's been the thing that's kind of buoyed this team. I don't think I in the after the first game or two, I was like, okay, what's going on with Ryan? What blah blah blah. You jump to conclusions, you get excited about certain topics. I don't think it's a sophomore slump for her. What I think it is we're seeing, and this
No,
is
she's still
no, she's putting up an amazing stat
17
lines. The
games.
team's really struggling. She's playing really, really well. I think there's an argument to an extent to be like, oh, well, if the team's not succeeding, then like it's some sort of a sophomore slump because the
Right.
team was succeeding more before.
From
Um,
from an efficiency standpoint, maybe a little bit, but like
yeah,
I'm not too concerned with that. I
no, I'm
just
not concerned about it at all. I think honestly, it boils down to, and I'll be honest, I plan to look into this more. Um, to me, it really comes out as a team that made strides last year, added important pieces, and they're trying to figure out how they kind of gel together. It's not last year. The same thing isn't going to work. You need to have that continuity, but also be able to grow in the moment. And I think we're seeing a team that's struggling um,
I just
to
don't
take
I just
that
don't
step.
think you have a lot of the pieces that you need to take that step. I mean,
Agree.
they're only averaging, what are they averaging a game? They're averaging about 83 a game. I'm trying to look up what they're giving up a game. That's my big question mark here. As we
Their defense has not been the Tanisha Wright defense that we expected, thought about, talked about,
yeah,
wanted it.
that's the biggest thing for me is like they're not guarding anybody. I mean, that sounds really harsh. They're second to last in the league in points given up per game at 86, and right there with Phoenix Mercury, who we know right now is struggling to guard people.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like right now, I think the bigger issue isn't necessarily like. I mean, you obviously have players on the Dream who can score. Ryan Howard, Cheyenne Parker. You've got Gray,
AD.
but I just don't think like interior wise, they have the horses that they need. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they're just missing huge pieces, literally.
And that's totally fine though, because this team isn't trying to do good. What I think it's going to be hard because we saw success in the record last year, but this year it's going to be more about can Alicia and Ryan pair together well for the future? Can, is Cheyenne Parker part of that for the future? How does Nas fit in for the future? Ari, when she comes back, what's that going to look like? I mean, also keep in mind, Aaron McDonald, who's been a very important role for this team, out with an injury, is a big deal. So, all right, real quick, let's run down the Winsidr Power Ranking. Shameless plug. I'll throw the link in the show notes. Rachel, if there's anything that you think is completely wrong, let me know and we'll make a move. I mean, honestly, I have a few things that I think are completely wrong, which is why I voted differently. Then we'll get into pick 'em and peace out for the day. Last place, Seattle Storm. Last week they were 11th. Minnesota Lynx, last rankings, they were 12th. Number 10, Phoenix Mercury, going up those rankings. They were in 9th and now they're in 10th. I think you could argue that they're last, but they did beat Minnesota.
I think I could argue that they're putrid, but yeah, keep
yeah.
going.
Yeah, Indiana Fever at 9. They moved up one spot. Atlanta Dream in the 8th spot, sitting happy there, not really fluctuating. LA Sparks in 7th. Chicago Sky in 6th, that moved out. See, this is where I disagreed because
I think Atlanta should drop more. They've lost 3 in a row, and yeah. But anyway, keep going. Yeah. Sorry not to interrupt.
No, I agree. I think it's like, does Indiana bump to number 8? I don't know. Chicago Sky, I think, should be higher than 6. Yes, they've lost 2 in a row, but I don't even necessarily really care about the Aces loss. And I look at how they played against New York, and that's why I had them personally higher. Dallas Wings at 5, finally breaking into that top 5. Washington Mystics at 4. I just can't agree with that.
I mean, they have won their last 2. Granted, yeah, I mean, it just in my mind conceptually, I see Dallas ahead of them right now. I'm not even trying to argue that. It's just the product I'm seeing on the court, and maybe it's recency bias from the last Mystics Seattle game, and I'm really down on him, which is probably the case. But okay, so you got Washington at 4.
Washington at 4, New York at 3, Connecticut at 2, and Vegas at 1. Although they lost, they're still number 1. I mean, I'm fine with that. I wouldn't have New York at 3. That's just my personal. That's why I didn't vote it. Overall, though, I think in general it paints the proper picture of this league, as power rankings, in my opinion, should. Okay, it's time for Pick'em now.
Hold on. I want to make some note. What were your thoughts of the?
Oh yeah, wait.
The retirement ceremonies.
So first of all, I thought it was very appropriate for the individuals that Sue's went on for like 3+ hours, and Sills was like 30 minutes. Granted, like I'll be completely honest, the whole time Rachel and I are texting and she's like, it's still going on. I was like, are you serious? I'm watching games. It's actually like 2 games have passed. What's going on?
Nikki like did work around the house, took a shower, cleaned the house, took her dogs for a walk, ran errands, came back, and she looked at me and her face was like, are you kidding me? She goes, what are they doing? It was so funny, but I loved it.
No, honestly, like here's the thing. First of all, I saw somebody say like that went on longer than anyone expected. So did Sue Bird's career. But no, like in all honesty, as WNBA fans, I've never seen outside of a game that much WNBA content together in one time period, right? Like 3 hours of WNBA content of people talking about the W on TV or on an app. I haven't seen that since you and I got drunk and just rambled on for 3 hours. Like that hasn't been, you know what I mean? So like to have that was so important, so meaningful. Honestly, I saw somebody else say like it was a thumb up at or biting of the thumb towards Stewie. Like, hey, if you would have stayed, this is what you could have gotten a few years. New York's never going to do that for you. Blah blah blah. And then like on the Sills, like, look, the Kleenexes were out, the
Man,
tissues were well used.
it
And then
was
the
an
Sill one
emotional
was like
day.
it was an
Gosh.
emotional day, and then the Sill
I
one was
texted
just
you.
like
I'm like,
so much her.
I texted you. I'm like, I'm eating ice cream. I'm eating junk food. I'm like, give me all the emotional food right now. This has been like 5 hours of like, wow, two players that I absolutely adore. I loved them both. I think they were both very different. I thought Sue's was extremely appropriate. And I thought Seattle did a really good job. Shout out to ESPN for having it on. I think Sills was on there too. Correct me if I'm wrong. I did end up watching it on League Pass, but I'm just thankful that we had the opportunity to watch those as fans who couldn't be there in attendance. I actually thought they both, in their own way, were very tastefully done, and they did a really good job with them.
Yeah, no, I liked both of them. I think they fit into like who they were as people.
So, mm-hmm.
I like look, we were texting during it like, oh my god, Minnesota's gonna blow the pooch. Seattle's gonna make Minnesota look so bad. But they didn't. Minnesota looked great. I thought an interesting thing for me was also the juxtaposition of on Friday night, Minnesota had their ceremony for the all-time 25 players, and then tonight for Sylvia. Now, all of the dynasty starting five stayed. Most of the other players left. Um, Dev Peters and Candice Wiggins stayed around for Sill's jersey retirement.
I
Also,
like the idea of that from a planning perspective and being able to get
yes,
people in town. And you could make a weekend out of it, you know?
yes. That said, they didn't make a weekend out of it. There was a serious lack of events for fans. I know Lynx season ticket holders, hardcore Lynx fans who will defend them to the depths, were pissed Friday night because none of the players spoke. It was literally walk out. We're going to hand you a jacket that did not seem to fit anybody appropriately. And we're going to say your name, and that's it. And we did it after the game.
That's disappointing.
Really disappointing. Also, like, it's the first time you have the Lynx Dynasty starting five. You literally had the Dynasty starting five because you had Taj, because you had what's her name? I'm blanking from University of Minnesota. I shouldn't be Janelle McCarville,
Mm-hmm.
and you had Sill. You had all of the starting fives from all of the Dynasty years, and you missed an opportunity to have a serious event where you could create content of the players talking about that experience. Like just so many missed opportunities in that regard, but I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of that. It was beautiful to see that team together
Yeah.
and get a moment and see them all speak for Sill. That was great. And it's funny because like everyone you wanted to see spoke at Sills, and from my understanding, I didn't see all of Sue's because I was watching games, but some people were missing, but also some people that like you didn't care to hear from spoke for way too long.
I think there were a lot of key people that couldn't make Sue's because like DT's playing. Gino
Yeah.
Oremo couldn't make it for some reason. It was really cool to have Lauren Jackson there and hear her speech. I think her speech took the cake. I think she did such a great job. Obviously, Sue is phenomenal behind a microphone. So for her to go on for over an hour was just comedy and all the emotions in once. But yeah, I mean, a lot of different speakers and a few others that kind of went on for a while. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. But hey, who am I?
Shout out to the fans though. A 3 hour event after a game, that
packed.
place was packed.
Yeah, it was.
Nobody left. That place, basketball, Seattle, Sue Bird.
Yep.
That's all I gotta say.
Yep.
Okay. You ready for pick'em? Just so everyone is aware, Rachel's still losing. I have a 1-game lead on her, 8-4, and Rachel's 7-5. So should we just end it now?
If you want to, if that's what you
No.
need to make yourself feel better, please, by all means.
Okay, so we have Mystics at Fever. Rachel?
Oh my god. Is Elena going to be back from her stiff neck?
Who knows? I mean, it's also funny because I picked that was going to be the game that Seattle maybe could win. I picked Seattle to win that game only because I was like, there's no way Delhi's playing back-to-backs.
I'm gonna say Washington. She'll be back and they'll win.
Cool. I went Fever. That's perfect. Dream at Liberty.
There's just no way. And New York's got that one.
Yep. Agreed. Storm at Mercury.
Oh God, that's like a battle royale right there. I just, ooh, that's a good game.
That's a really good game. That's a really tough game.
That's a good game. I think at the end of the day, I've got to go with Phoenix. They're at home. They've got BG. I know you've got Jewel Lloyd on the flip side of it. I think Tarazi will make enough shots. Cunningham will hit some shots. I think it'll end up being Mercury.
I agree with you, but I'm going Storm on that
Just to
because
mix it up.
eventually, no, but like eventually, right? Like we've seen the Mercury not get it together, and like I know roster wise they're a better team, right? Like BG's gonna beast. What's Mercedes Russell gonna do? BG. Diana Taurasi's shooting has been abysmal this season, and if she can't get it going with the amount of shots she takes a game, she really puts her team behind because it's just wasted
I
possessions.
mean, and here's the thing: if you, this is no offense to Seattle, because I have this endearing that's growing because they have so much little heart in them. That I have this endearing place in my heart for this new Seattle team. It's nothing against them, but if Phoenix can't come out of this at home with a win, shame on them.
Yeah, 100% agree. Sparks at Wings.
I'm going Wings.
Same. Dream at Sun.
Connecticut.
Yeah. I mean,
Jeez.
that's I wouldn't be like overly shocked if they blew it only because like eventually the Dream are going to right the ship, I feel like,
agree,
pun intended. It's not that game.
I don't think you have an answer for Alyssa Thomas on that team.
Not Fever at Sky.
I feel like these two have played like 6 times already. Am I wrong?
I don't disagree. I do remember. Granted, overtime feels like it's a second game, but
I don't know. I'm gonna go Fever.
okay, I went Sky on that one. And Storm at Aces. Do we have an upset?
Bless Seattle, but yeah, Las Vegas.
All right, well, we'll see what happens after this one. Rachel, close out the episode. I got a question for you. Who's your GOAT?
Pickle.